Hey guys, my name is Adam, and I'm going to talk a little bit about E3 today. So you're going to see this from me over the next couple of days. I want to do a lot of E3 coverage because, quite frankly, it's the biggest thing in gaming right now. Everyone's talking about it, so I'm going to jump right on board and give you my thoughts. And we're going to start off with the Sony E3 press conference, which turned out to be fantastic. I was solidly impressed. I think they did a much better job here than they did at their reveal event. Now, at the reveal event, they didn't necessarily make it too interesting. This time, it was very different, and I love it. So, the reveal event did one thing really good. It showed off a lot of games, a ton of games, and people thought Sony were pretty much out of stuff to show, and E3 would be more about hardware specifications and different features that the PS4 would have. Absolutely not. No way, because Sony at E3 decided, you know what, we're just going to shove a ton more games down your throat, and for a solid 2 hours, they barraged us with game titles, exclusives, new IPs, old IPs, sequels. It was one of the greatest things ever, and that's what people wanted. The cheers from the crowd were truly awesome, and you don't need me to tell you that Sony won E3, because if you just listen to the crowd during that conference, at one point they end up chanting Sony's name, which is crazy. Usually people that go to conferences, these professional business guys, they don't get behind stuff that thoroughly, but wow, they were really cheering for Sony, and I cannot blame them one bit. Now, there were a lot of statements directed right at Microsoft during that event as well, which I found really funny, and the crowd definitely enjoyed it as well. So, Sony actually never mentioned the Xbox One at all, which is pretty common. No one really expected them to, but there were certainly some jabs at them. For example, Sony ended up at the end of the conference saying that there would be used games. There would absolutely be used games. They're supporting it 100%. The cheer was great. That was like one of the loudest cheers I've ever seen at a reveal event, and I was pretty surprised. I did not realize so many people would be behind that, but wow, the applause was great. Also, there would be absolutely no online DRM, and again, cheers across the place. It was crazy. But that's what Sony really did. They did it so right. After watching the whole event, I was solidly impressed, and also they showed a lot of good games. So we got to see Watch Dogs, we got to see Assassin's Creed, which it's very unfortunate there was technical malfunctions during that event, but nonetheless we got to see a little bit of it. We got to see, what else? Transistor, which is a great game. It's from the creators of Bastion. It's going to be coming out later this year. We got to see just a bunch of new IPs. Kingdom Hearts 3 was a big one, and people were definitely cheering for that. We got to see Final Fantasy 15, I believe, so a bunch of good stuff. Now, Square Enix actually did do a pretty good job announcing that kind of stuff. They ended up showing us Final Fantasy 15 as well as Kingdom Hearts 3, and the applause for them was pretty good. Now, Kingdom Hearts 3 is certainly going to be a system seller, and I'm curious to see exactly what they're going to do with that title. I don't know too much about it. I was never really into those type of games, but it apparently is a huge one, and people are really interested. Another thing that we got to see that I thought was really interesting was a bunch of indie developers actually gathered around Sony. This was a big message. On stage, you had some really, really popular indie games being shown off, and they were going to be on the PlayStation. We got to see Warframe, we got to see Ray's Living Dead, I believe is what it's called, or Ray's Walking Dead, something similar to that. Sorry for getting your name wrong if I did. Also, we saw... what was it called? Don't Starve, and a couple other titles that looked really good. So a lot of people were surprised that Sony was actually giving the indie devs the stage, because they ended up having just like separate panels set up where there was Don't Starve here, and then Ray's Walking Dead over here, and so on and so forth, and it was pretty much surrounding the whole area. People thought that was awesome, and I can't blame them. It's nice to see Sony actually taking interest in indie development. Essentially, what we're seeing is Microsoft is sticking with the traditional AAA mega profit nonsense, and Sony is moving over towards like independent development, which is cool. Now, which will have a, I don't know, will the majority support Microsoft's plan or Sony's plan? A lot of people just tend to like AAA titles. That's all they'll ever buy. Other people do a ton of indie games. Ton of them. So it's going to definitely be a split demographic. Now, that being said, though, with the jabs at Microsoft concerning used games and always online DRM, the crowd was absolutely thrilled. Now, obviously, we've known this stuff for quite a few months, but it was never fully confirmed, and when Sony themselves say it, it just kind of ignites a flame again, and it makes people really happy. I had a strong feeling there wouldn't be used games, or I had a strong feeling there would be used games on the PlayStation, and I also felt that there would be no DRM considering the backlash that Microsoft got. So I wasn't surprised, but I was certainly happy they announced it. I was really happy for that. Now, one thing that I am kind of surprised they didn't show off would be stuff like the controller, various interfaces, so on and so forth. I'm kind of curious what they're going to show off next time. The next event, I couldn't tell you what it will be. Probably something in the near future, maybe PAX Prime. But we're getting close to when the consoles are supposed to come out, and we've seen some really good stuff. As of right now, Sony is definitely in the lead in terms of the console war, and the thing that Microsoft is trying to do is become a new entertainment system. But the problem with that is that Sony's already been on top of the world with that for a long time. What made Microsoft's console really strong was it was a better gaming machine. The Xbox 360 was a better gaming machine than the PlayStation 3. However, the PlayStation 3 at least, was a better entertainment system than the Xbox 360. Now, why in the world would Microsoft switch from gaming to entertainment when last generation the gaming side actually won? I don't know, maybe they think people are going to start moving away from gaming over towards just basic entertainment like Netflix, Hulu, and so on and so forth, but that's not really what the trend is showing. We're seeing a lot of movement over towards indie development, and gaming is always rising, so I don't really know Microsoft's plan here. I hope they know what they're doing, because I don't want Sony to just have exclusive control over the console market. I don't think that's a good idea, but there needs to be competition. I just worry that Sony will absolutely break away with this, sell just tons more than Microsoft, and that's not in itself really good. I'm happy that the PlayStation's doing really well. I think they deserve to win this next console war because of the horrible business practices that Microsoft is using, but even still, I hate it when there's no competition, because then prices can rise, so on and so forth. Another thing we learned at E3, though, is that Sony's console is actually going to cost less than Microsoft's. That is really what turned a lot of people. Microsoft's console is going to be $500. That's quite expensive. Nothing unheard of, though. I believe that's the release price of the PlayStation 3. But the PlayStation 4, I believe, is going to go out for $400. So, overall, a lot of people were going to get the Xbox One if it actually costs less than Sony's device. But now it looks like they're going to opt for the PlayStation 4 just on the basis that it costs less. And it's actually a more powerful console. If you actually look at the hardware specifications on each machine, the PlayStation is more powerful. That's just the way it is. There's really no getting around that. That's just pretty much the case and point. Now, that doesn't really matter too much to Microsoft because they're going for this entertainment system, but to Sony, who is creating a gaming rig, it is quite important for obvious reasons. You need to play your games at the highest possible graphical fidelity. But I think Sony did a great job. I was solidly impressed, and I'm eager to see more from them. But that does it for this video. Let me know what you think of the Sony conference down in the comments section, and I will see you in future videos.